Entire outcome of Avengers Infinity War wasn't just the desperate gamble of a single sorcerer looking into the future, but the deliberate manipulation of one of Marvel's most dangerous minds lurking in the shadows. What if the so-called one way Doctor Strange saw wasn't destiny, but deception? And what if, in that one hidden possibility, there was a masked figure whispering into Strange's ear, bending fate itself to his will? What if Dr. Doom orchestrated the death of Tony Stark? Now hold on, I know that sounds insane. You might be thinking, Doom? In Infinity War? He wasn't even in the MCU. But this theory isn't about cameos or fan service. It's about the terrifying logic of Victor Von Doom. A man so cunning, so ruthless, that if there were even the slightest chance Tony Stark could rise beyond Thanos and wield the true potential of the Infinity Stones, Doom would have to eliminate him. And the best part? He wouldn't lift a single finger. He'd let Tony's own friends do it for him. So today, we're diving deep into a story you've never seen told on screen, but one that hides right beneath the surface of the multiverse. A story where Strange's cryptic 14 million possibilities isn't a noble sacrifice, it's the scar of corruption. A story where the sacrifice of Iron Man wasn't fate, it was Doom's plan. And if that's true, then the path to God Emperor Doom, the most powerful version of Victor Von Doom ever imagined, starts not in Battleworld, not in Secret Wars, but in that moment on Titan, with Strange raising a single trembling finger. But to understand how deep this rabbit hole goes, we need to start at the beginning. Not with Tony, not with Thanos, but with Doom himself. Victor Von Doom has always been different from the other villains. He's not like Thanos, whose obsession was almost poetic in its madness, or Loki, who craved love and recognition more than power. Doom is something else entirely. He is a man who views the world as broken and himself as the only one strong enough to fix it. His arrogance is legendary, but unlike most, Doom actually can back it up. A genius inventor, a master sorcerer, a ruler with both charisma and cruelty, Doom doesn't see himself as evil. He sees himself as inevitable. Now imagine someone like that watching Tony Stark. Because make no mistake, Tony is Doom's mirror in many ways. Both men of science, both burdened by hubris, both refusing to bow before the gods. The difference? Tony fought to become a hero. Doom fought to become a god. And that's exactly why Tony represented a danger that Doom could never allow to exist. See, the Infinity Stones are not just shiny weapons. In Marvel lore, they're more than tools of destruction. They are fragments of ultimate knowledge. To wield even one is to touch the fabric of reality itself. To wield all six is to understand creation in a way that no mortal mind should. And Tony Stark, well, Tony had the mind, the will, and the ingenuity to survive that impossible act. That's what makes this theory so chilling. If Tony had lived and retained even a fraction of what he learned in that moment when he snapped his fingers, Doom would be standing face to face with his greatest rival. And Doom doesn't leave rivals alive. But here's the question, how does Doom even insert himself into this story? How does a man who, in the MCU timeline, hasn't even been introduced yet, end up playing puppet master to the Sorcerer Supreme? This is where the multiverse cracks the door wide open. Think back to Strange on Titan, trembling as he sifted through millions of futures. Do we really believe he did that alone? Think about it. He's scouring time, reality, and possibility. Who's to say that while Strange's mind wandered through the infinite, another mind, sharp, relentless, predatory, wasn't waiting there in the shadows of the multiverse? Enter Victor Von Doom. In one of those 14 million futures, Strange sees a man unlike any other. Cloaked in iron, his face hidden behind a mask that gleams with cold precision. Doom doesn't just appear to Strange. He speaks, he whispers, and Strange, weakened by desperation, listens. Now here's the twisted brilliance. Doom doesn't need to show Strange how to win. He just needs to convince him that Tony Stark cannot be allowed to survive victory, that if Tony lives, the future collapses. And Strange, already burdened by the fate of half the universe, accepts that grim logic. Because that's what makes Doom so dangerous. He doesn't conquer with force. He conquers with ideas. So when Strange comes back from that vision, his eyes hollow, his hands shaking, and he tells Tony that out of millions of outcomes, there's only one chance. It isn't because destiny demanded it. It's because Doom demanded it. And here's where the story begins to burn slowly, like a fuse heading toward an explosion. Because we know how it ends. Tony Stark dies. Strange gives him the nod. The gauntlet snaps. Thanos falls. And the world mourns a hero. But buried in that moment is a question we've never truly asked. Like, why did Strange never once consider himself the sacrifice? Think about it. Strange is the sorcerer supreme. He's the master of mystic arts. He's faced down Dormammu himself. And yet out of all the futures he saw, the only one that worked was the one where Tony dies? Really? Isn't it at least plausible that Strange or Thor or even Captain Marvel could have delivered that final blow? So why Tony? Why was his death so inevitable? Because it wasn't fate. It was manipulation. Doom, from within that single twisted possibility, convinced Strange that Tony Stark must be removed, that his death was the necessary key. And Strange, believing he was saving the universe, walked straight into Doom's plan. Now let's pause and look at the bigger picture. Doom's ultimate ambition, as comic readers know, isn't just ruling Latveria. It's godhood. During Secret Wars, Doom seizes the power of the Beyonders and reshapes reality itself, crowning himself God Emperor Doom. But in order to rise to that level, he must ensure there are no threats left standing who could challenge his dominion. And Tony Stark, infused with the knowledge of the Infinity Stones, could have been exactly that threat. Imagine Tony surviving the snap, his body broken but his mind awakened by cosmic truth. Imagine him building something new, an armor forged not from steel, but from the raw essence of infinity. Imagine a weapon designed to keep even Doom at bay. That is why Doom moves early. That is why Tony has to die before the multiverse war even begins. And the cruelest part, Doom never even had to dirty his hands. He made Strange do it for him. But this is just the beginning. Because if Doom planted the seed in Strange's mind, then Strange's loyalty may already be compromised. Think about his line in Endgame. If I tell you what happens, it won't happen. On the surface, it's about preserving the timeline. But underneath, it sounds a lot like obedience. Like Strange is protecting not destiny, but a design. Doom's design. So when Strange raises that single finger to Tony, it's not a signal of hope. It's the silent mark of betrayal. A reminder that Tony's sacrifice wasn't chosen by him, it was chosen for him. And that brings us to Act 1 of this theory's unfolding. Because if we stop here, all we have is suspicion. But if we keep pulling this thread, we begin to see how Doom's manipulation doesn't just end with Tony's death. No, this is Doom playing the long game. A game where every move, every whisper, every choice, every illusion of inevitability sets the stage for his ascension. Act 1 is the setup, and right now the pieces are on the board. Doom has manipulated Strange. Strange has set the stage for Tony's sacrifice. And the Infinity Stones, their knowledge and power, are ripped from Stark's hands before he can wield them in full. But here's the chilling question that takes us into Act 2. If Doom could reach into Strange's vision of the future once, what else has he already touched? What other strings has he pulled that we've mistaken for destiny? And more importantly, what happens when Doom finally steps out of the shadows? The question lingers like smoke after a battlefield fire. If Doom could reach into Strange's vision once, if he could whisper just a single suggestion into the heart of the Sorcerer Supreme during those impossible calculations, then where does his influence stop? Was it only Tony's death he orchestrated, Or has he been laying out a path far larger than we've dared to imagine? Because if you know anything about Doom, you know one truth. He does not play for small stakes. He does not settle for survival. Doom is a builder of empires, a weaver of inevitability. And the more you look at the chain of events in the Infinity Saga, the more you begin to see the faint outline of his hand, like a ghost hidden in plain sight. Let's start with Strange himself, the man who was supposed to be the protector of the Time Stone, the man who swore that he would let Tony or Peter die before he surrendered it. And yet when the moment came, he handed it over freely. Why? Most people will tell you it was strategy, that Strange gave up the stone because he saw the one way to win. But what if that one way was already seeded by Doom's corruption? Think of it like this. If Doom can convince Strange that Tony's survival leads to disaster, then Strange's every decision suddenly makes perfect sense. Surrendering the stone wasn't about saving Tony. It was about ensuring Tony lived just long enough to be positioned on the chessboard, then sacrificed at the exact right moment. Strange wasn't protecting Stark. He was delivering him. And doesn't that sound exactly like Doom's style? Now zoom out further. Remember the Battle of Wakanda. The Avengers, the Guardians, the armies of Earth, they all fought to stop Thanos from completing his gauntlet. And yet somehow everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Thor arrives too late. Vision hesitates. Wanda delays. Banner can't summon the Hulk. Every thread unravels perfectly for Thanos' rise. Almost. Too perfectly. What if that wasn't random failure? What if Doom's influence wasn't limited to Strange, but stretched across the board in subtle ways? Because Doom is not just a sorcerer, he is a scientist. A manipulator of probability. A strategist who knows how to bend people's flaws against them. And in a multiverse where futures can be nudged by the smallest choices, Doom doesn't need to overpower his enemies, he just needs to guide them into defeating themselves. So while we mourn the hero's mistakes, Doom may have been quietly laughing. But here's where the story grows darker. Because in the aftermath of Endgame, one question has never fully been answered. Why was Tony the only one to wield the gauntlet and survive long enough to act? Think about it. Hulk was chosen for his gamma resistance. Thor wielded the full might of Stormbreaker. Carol Danvers is powered by the Tesseract itself. Yet none of them were the one. Only Tony. Only Tony could make the snap. And that means Doom's plan required Tony's brilliance. He needed Stark to be the one to grasp the stones, to touch infinity. Because here's the cruel twist, even in death, knowledge lingers. When Tony used the gauntlet, his mind would have been flooded with truths far beyond mortal comprehension. The patterns of creation, the delicate balance of space, time, mind, and reality. And even though his body died, that knowledge didn't just vanish. It left an imprint. And who better to collect the scraps of that imprint than Victor Von Doom? Let's explore how. Doom has always been a scavenger of genius. In the comics, he steals Reed Richards' innovations, weaponizes alien technology, and fuses science with sorcery in ways no one else dares. So imagine Doom reaching into the sacred timeline like a thief in the night. Tony's death created not just grief, it created residue. Residue of cosmic knowledge. Doom doesn't need Tony alive. He just needs Tony's mind broken open at the moment of infinity, so Doom can plunder the fragments that scatter through the multiverse. And suddenly, Strange's betrayal becomes more than a tactical move. It becomes the opening of a vault. Doom convinces Strange to sacrifice Tony, and Doom reaps the hidden rewards. But why stop there? Once you start to follow this thread, a terrifying pattern emerges. Think about Strange's role in Spider-Man: No Way Home. Was it really Peter's pleading that led Strange to cast that dangerous spell? Or was Doom's whisper still echoing in his mind? Strange has always been arrogant, but that particular recklessness feels almost suspicious. Like a sorcerer, still tethered to someone else's design. And the outcome? The multiverse cracks open. Doom's playground is unleashed. Think about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Strange is forced to confront alternate selves, versions corrupted by their own ambition, their own flirtations with forbidden knowledge. Is that coincidence? Or is it Doom's long shadow showing Strange what he could become, grooming him for loyalty when the true moment arrives? Because Doom doesn't just manipulate futures. He breaks men. He molds them. And Strange, burdened by guilt over Tony's death and haunted by his own darker variants, becomes the perfect candidate for Doom's eventual side. Now this raises another chilling possibility. Maybe Strange isn't just manipulated. Maybe he's already converted. Maybe by the time of Endgame, Strange is no longer the independent protector we believe him to be, but a servant in waiting. Doom's secret apprentice, whether he knows it consciously or not. And if that's the case, then Tony's death wasn't the end of Doom's plan, it was the first offering. The first sacrifice on the path to godhood. Because to become God Emperor Doom, you don't just seize power, you clear the board. You eliminate every possible rival who might stand in your way. And Tony Stark, armed with infinity knowledge, would have been the greatest rival Doom had ever faced. By ensuring his death, Doom doesn't just win a battle, he secures the future. But here's where the storytelling tension peaks in Act 2. The multiverse war hasn't even begun yet. Kang, the TVA, incursions. These are the distractions, the noise. Everyone believes the coming threat is Kang the Conqueror. But Doom? Doom is patient. Doom watches from the cracks, letting Kang make his play, letting universes collide, knowing that when the dust settles, he will rise as the only one who saw the board clearly. And when that moment comes, Strange will be by his side. Not as a prisoner, not as a puppet, but as a believer. A man who already compromised once, who already chose Doom's logic over Tony's life. And once you compromise like that, the door never truly closes again. So let's take a step back and ask, was Tony's sacrifice ever truly about saving the world from Thanos? Or was it about paving the road for Doom? Look at it from Doom's perspective. Thanos was never the true obstacle. Thanos' victory, or even his defeat, didn't matter. What mattered was preventing a rival, Tony Stark, from rising beyond the level of gods. By orchestrating Tony's sacrifice, Doom didn't just eliminate a threat. He bought himself time. Time to prepare. Time to build. Time to wait for the perfect moment to reveal himself as the savior of a broken multiverse. And if that's the case, then everything we've seen since, every fracture in reality, every multiversal chaos might not be random at all. It might be Doom's design unfolding slowly, inevitably, like the tightening of a noose. Now let's confront the elephant in the room. If this theory holds true, then Doom isn't just lurking as a potential future villain. He's already here, already active, already shaping the sacred timeline. And that flips the entire MCU narrative on its head. Because instead of Doom being an upcoming adversary introduced after Kang, we've been living in Doom's shadow this entire time. Every sacrifice, every destined event, every convenient failure, it all traces back to him. And isn't that exactly how Doom would want it? His greatest triumphs happen not with grand declarations, but in silence. While heroes think they're winning, Doom is quietly ensuring they've only walked into his trap. So as Act 2 closes, we're left with an unsettling vision. Tony Stark's death wasn't fate. It was Doom's first great victory in the MCU. Strange wasn't the noble protector of destiny. He was the corrupted vessel of Doom's will. And every crack in the multiverse since has been part of a greater design, one leading toward the rise of God Emperor Doom. But if Act 2 shows us the trap, Act 3 will reveal the spring. Because there's one final piece missing. What happens when Doom steps out of the shadows and claims his throne? And what role does Strange play in that final ascension? The stage is set. the fuse is lit. And the endgame of Doom has only just begun. The story so far leaves us standing at the edge of revelation. If Act 1 was the seed, Doom's whisper in Strange's vision, and Act 2 was the growth of that seed into a web of manipulation spanning across the Infinity Saga, then Act 3 is where the harvest comes due. The mask falls, the shadow steps into light, and we finally see what Doom has been building toward all along. Because if Victor Von Doom has been moving pieces from the beginning, then Tony Stark's sacrifice was never an end. It was merely the opening act of a much larger design. A design not for victory over Thanos, not even for dominion over a single timeline, but for Doom's coronation as the ruler of all existence. To understand Doom's final plan, we need to revisit a concept buried deep in Marvel's lore: incursions. Universes colliding, realities overlapping, the destruction of entire worlds. In the comics, incursions are the pathway that leads to secret wars, and in secret wars, Doom reigns supreme. He steals the power of the Beyonders and forges Battle World, a patchwork universe where he rules as God Emperor. Now here's the terrifying twist. What if those incursions are not just a natural consequence of tampering with the multiverse, but the intended result of Doom's hidden manipulations? Think about it. Loki, Sylvie, Wanda, Strange, all heroes, all poking holes in reality, all unleashing chaos. But what if those holes were nudged wider by Doom's design? What if he needed incursions to happen, to accelerate, to grow, so that when the final collapse comes, he's the only one prepared to seize control? In this light, Kang is just a red herring. Kang is the chaos before the storm, the distraction that convinces us all we've seen the true villain. But Kang doesn't win in the comics. Kang never holds godhood. Doom does. Doom always does. And here's where the role of Doctor Strange becomes painfully clear. Strange is not just Doom's pawn, he is his prophet. The man who has already betrayed one of Earth's greatest heroes, already compromised his morality for what he thought was necessity. Strange's guilt makes him pliable, his brilliance makes him useful, and his understanding of the multiverse makes him indispensable. Imagine the moment. Universes collapsing, heroes scattered, chaos reigning, and through the void steps Strange, cloaked, weary, but loyal. By his side, a figure in gleaming armor, face hidden, voice resonant with authority. Strange doesn't fight him. Strange serves him, because Strange believes this is the only way. Doom convinced him long ago that there was only ever one path. And now, at the end of all things, Strange fulfills that conviction by standing beside Doom as he claims reality itself. This is how God Emperor Doom is born. Not as a conqueror who took power by brute force, but as the orchestrator who engineered every sacrifice, every collapse, every inevitability. Let's put it in human terms. For Tony Stark, sacrifice was the final act of heroism. For Doom, Tony's sacrifice was a down payment, a currency to buy the silence of the universe until Doom was ready. Strange delivered the payment, and Doom has been collecting interest ever since. And think about the irony. Tony Stark, the man who prided himself on always being one step ahead, became the man Doom most needed to blind. Tony's sacrifice wasn't just noble, it was tragic in the truest sense. He died believing he had saved everyone, when in fact his death paved the road for the most dangerous tyrant in existence. This is the core of Doom's brilliance. He doesn't just defeat his enemies. He makes them believe they won, right up until the moment he claims their ashes. Now let's turn to the climax of this theory. How does Doom cement his rise? How does he go from whispering manipulator to God Emperor? The answer lies in what he has always pursued: control of both science and sorcery. Unlike Thanos, who relied on brute force and obsession, Doom blends two disciplines that make him uniquely unstoppable. Picture this: As the incursions intensify, Doom seizes fragments of Infinity knowledge left behind by Stark's death. He combines it with the mystic wisdom stolen through Strange's corruption. He weaponizes science, magic, and cosmic truths into something no hero can match. Not even Kang, not even the Celestials. Doom builds not just armor, not just weapons, but a reality of his own making. A battle world forged from the ruins of collapsing universes. And who stands beside him as his lieutenant? Dr. Stephen Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme who once bargained with Dormammu, who once swore to protect the Time Stone, now reduced to a shadow in Doom's empire. A man who has traded his oath for survival, his conscience for obedience, his honor for inevitability. It's almost poetic. Doom, the man who could never accept Reed Richards as his equal, has instead found in Strange a man willing to kneel. And Strange, forever haunted by the finger he raised on Titan, becomes the herald of Doom's godhood. And here's where we feel the full weight of Tony Stark's absence. Because if Tony had survived, if he had retained even a fragment of the Infinity Stone's knowledge, Doom's path would have been blocked. Tony would have seen the incursions coming. Tony would have built something no one else could conceive. A weapon, an armor, a safeguard, maybe even a reality-bending suit forged from infinity itself. Tony Stark, alive, is the one variable Doom cannot calculate, the one rival he cannot predict. So Doom makes sure Tony Stark is gone, permanently. That's why the one-way Strange saw was never about defeating Thanos. It was about clearing Doom's future. The true enemy wasn't the Mad Titan. The true enemy was the man who could surpass Doom. And so the stage was cleared, the hero was sacrificed, and the road to God Emperor Doom was paved. Now let's step back and look at the bigger picture one final time. The MCU has taught us to see heroes as saviors and villains as obstacles. But this theory flips the script. Because if Doom has been here all along, then the MCU we've been watching isn't a story of heroes saving the day. It's a story of Doom shaping the day. Every battle, every sacrifice, every destiny we thought was written in stone was, in fact, written by Doom's hand. And isn't that the most terrifying villain of all? Not the one who storms the gates, but the one who writes the story in which the gates fall on their own. So where does this leave us? With a chilling possibility, the next great saga of the MCU is not about Kang. It's not even about the multiverse collapsing. It's about Doom stepping into the light, revealing that he has been the silent architect all along. And when that moment comes, the heroes of Earth 616 won't just be facing another cosmic tyrant. They'll be facing a man who already won before they even knew he was playing. The Finger. Strange raised on Titan was not a beacon of hope. It was the first salute to Doom. And that's the climax. The revelation that Tony Stark's sacrifice wasn't fate, but design. That Strange's loyalty has already been compromised. That Doom has been waiting patiently for the moment the multiverse tears itself apart so that he can step in as the savior, the ruler, the God Emperor. When the dust clears, when Kang is gone, when incursions leave nothing but fragments of broken worlds, it won't be destiny that saves us. It will be Doom. Not because he's noble, not because he's merciful, but because every other option was eliminated long ago. Eliminated by him. That's the horror. That's the inevitability. That's the Doom. And if you've stayed with this story from the beginning, if you felt the tension of Strange's betrayal, the tragedy of Tony's sacrifice, and the inevitability of Doom's rise, then you know this isn't just a theory about Marvel. It's a story about power, about manipulation, and about how sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one who fights you, but the one who convinces you to fight yourself. Because in the end, Doom doesn't just win. Doom makes you believe you had no other choice. So if you love diving into this theory, if you felt the same goosebumps I felt telling it, then hit that like button, share this story with every Marvel fan you know, and subscribe for more. And if you want to go even further to support the channel directly, consider dropping a $25 super thanks. It helps us build more stories like this, bigger and deeper every time. Because trust me, this was just one possibility out of 14 million.